So in the footage you're watching here, this map has something like 160% more monster life as well as a bunch of other dangerous mods, and I want to note that I am not taking any of the shrines here because I know that if I just show a video with a bunch of shrines, people will complain. So this has no shrines whatsoever, a ton of monster life, and I will also show you the boss. So the boss doesn't die super quickly, but it is a 20% delirious, juice tier 17 with a bunch of map effect, 160% more monster life, and I think she dies like respectably quickly, especially considering this is a clear build. So I wanted to make sure that I give you a circumstance where there is like a ton of defenses on the map so that you can see that the build actually does damage. Because in comparison, this is how a more normal map looks. Whenever I am just grabbing shrines, going through and trying to blast stuff, things die significantly faster, the build moves significantly faster, and because ambush scarabs and other things are so insanely expensive this league, I've just been using domination to juice a whole bunch of monsters into my map, which has been working out relatively well for me, and it gives you the bonus of making you move really fast without a headhunter or anything. So this is the character that was previously the Ellie hit build that you might be familiar with if you've been playing. This is the Kinetic Blast upgrade that I have made to this character. Sorry it took me a little bit, I just was getting over sickness and a whole bunch of other stuff, but we're here. I've got the mid-level upgrade is what I would say. This is going to be good for like blasting tier 17 maps, farming up a whole bunch of currency, and either generating enough money to make another build or transition into a much higher version of the build that I'm going to probably work on next for the next couple of days. That'll probably include like a Fizz Wand and a Headhunter and all that kind of good stuff. We'll see how that goes, but this version should be able to do most juiced map farming perfectly fine. So when it comes to wands, the king of wand abilities is Kinetic Blast, and the reason for that is just because whenever this ability hits something, it pops all these different AoE-like spots all over the ground, and as you can see, we have this tornado that we're able to hit, meaning that we are able to double dip on those AoEs. And we are abusing mercenaries like everyone else should be doing and getting an absolutely ridiculous amount of damage with this, but we'll talk about the mercenary again in a moment. Now, the difference here between this version of the build and other versions of the build is that we are a champion right now, and we are a champion to make use of Fortify because I figured that the mercenary would probably die in very juiced content, especially if we're giving it Doriani's, so giving Fortify and like 30 max Fortify is what I think that we're at to our Mercenary is pretty useful. Adrenaline's pretty useful for getting around pretty quickly, so we have done the champion. So this is a clear build. Now, if you are wanting to do bosses, if you get to the build to this point, you can probably do normal pinnacle bosses. I would not suggest trying uber pinnacle bosses. It's just going to be a pain. It's not what this build is made for. This is made for farm in tier 17 maps, farm in tier 16.5 maps, juicing them up and making a whole bunch of currency. That's what this is for. So let's talk a little bit about all the skills that we do use. So Kinetic Blast I talked a little bit about before. This is the bread and butter clear wand skill, probably one of the best clear skills in the game. It is just an absolute monster. Every single time it hits, pierces, all of that, it does those AoEs, and they can overlap, so you can get one projectile hit as well as one AoE hit because you're hitting the tornado as well. Beyond that, we do have Flame Dash. This is just our ability to get over gaps. That's all we're using it for. We move around with Shield Charge. This is our main movement ability. It's on my second bar, as you can see here. And then we also do have Blood Rage. This is just an easy way to generate some extra frenzy charges and get some attack speed. And then we have our Order to Me Mercenary button. We use this to keep the mercenary near enemies pretty frequently. Now, lastly, we do have this Corrupting Fever. Now, one big thing about Corrupting Fever that you need to know is that if you over level this gem, it will kill you because it's just going to eat all of your life. You want to get it to the point where it's consuming a little bit over half of your life so that when you proc it, if you are at full health and you proc this adrenaline, it'll heal you because of the ascendancy and bring you back up to about 75% if you are at full. I highly suggest that if you do proc it, immediately use a life flask afterwards. And don't spam this. You can't re-up the adrenaline until it's gone, so if you spam it, you're just going to kill yourself pretty quickly, all right? Now, as for our auras, we are using a Spellslinger Tornado, and as I said before, the reason for this is because you can hit the tornado, and when you hit the tornado, it will pierce the tornado, still hitting the boss behind it, and then also giving you one additional overlap, which gives you like 50% overall more damage. However, there is kind of a little bit of tech with this in that you need to be a certain distance away to make those overlaps actually hit. So if you see these AoEs that are proccing right there, that's about the range that you need to be at, because if you're too close, they won't actually hit the boss. So you need to be about this far away. You might see in some of the videos that I'm like trying to position myself in the right spot. When you find the sweet spot, you realize how much more damage you're doing. Besides that, on our auras, we are also using Flesh and Stone. This is just to make us take a little bit less damage while we're up in the boss's face. We are using Tempest Shield to get some spell block. We have a ton of evasion, so spell block is good. We are using Precision just because I had a little bit of mana left in a gem slot, some accuracy, some crit, and then Grace because we are mainly stacking evasion as our defensive layer. So that's it for the gems. Let's talk about the gear. So let's talk about the uniques first before we get into like the wand and stuff like that. So we are using Replica Hiri's Ire because of some mechanics on the Mercenary that I'll talk about in a moment. The chest piece is really solid, gives us a ton of evasion. Suppression is good for us. Intelligence is really good because that comes at a premium for where we are in the tree. And then a bunch of added lightning damage to wand attacks. Just a really good chest piece. Getting the off colors is pretty tough, but you know, it is what it is. If you're playing this build, you're gonna need a little bit of currency to play it. Next is going to be Replica Badge of the Brotherhood. The reason we're using this is because we are able to give our maximum Fortify to everyone around us, including our Mercenary that's nearby. So this makes it so that we can both have maximum Frenzy charges, count as our maximum Endurance charges, and then those maximum Endurance charges also give us maximum Fortification. This plus the Timeless Jewel that I have with as many fortifies as I can give us up to, I think it's around 30, 31 whenever we are, yeah, I think it's 30. So 30 fortification whenever we are clearing. So that means that we have 30% less damage taken from hits, which is pretty good. Next is going to be Darkness Enthroned. This item is just silly broken for wand builds. Like it genuinely is just really too strong. So the reason for that is that you get these jewels where you get like a fractured added lightning damage with wand attacks and you just roll it with lightning damage. You get some life. You try to get like chance to avoid being shocked and maybe some like chance to gain phasing on kill. This belt gives me like 20% of the whole entire build's damage. It's pretty insane. And then lastly, for the uniques, we are using Saffles. Svalin this league is unbelievably expensive. I think it's up to like 60 or 70 divine right now, and that's just too much for the current cost of this build. In the next high-end version, I might add it. We'll see. I don't know. But for right now, Saffles is pretty good because we just need the spell block. The +4 maximum all resist is also super useful. We don't really need to block attack damage because we have 95% evasion most of the time anyways. Spell damage is really good for us because Kinetic Blast scales with it doubly, and then all LE resist is just useful. The Corrupt you don't need, but you know, chance to block spell damage is pretty nice. Talking about the rest of the gear, so the helmet, the gloves, and the boots, just buy them. Like, you can get whatever stats that you need, just life, resistances, movement speed, suppression, anything that you need off of these. You can craft them if you want. I put some notes in the POB to talk about how to craft these. The rings, these are probably the piece that are the hardest to craft out of everything here that I would say, and you kind of want to build your gear around whatever rings you can make. You need an Elder Amethyst ring, and you just Chaos reforge it on the Harvest bench until you get that gain life per enemy hit with attacks. And then you just kind of take whatever you can get on the ring. Like, just really take anything that you can get because these are pretty hard to craft. Once you get that, then you can, you know, get all the rest of your gear built around it, get your resistances in place around it. Just so you can see, my character has like 100 all resist and 75 chaos. So I've got plenty of resistances with this gear, and these rings are not insane by any means, right? And then lastly is going to be the wand. So one big change that they made this league that I was kind of worried about was the fact that they were making it so that wands roll attack mods significantly less frequent. It's not as bad as I was thinking that it was going to be, but because spells are a little bit more common to be rolled on wands, you can get a like hybrid spell damage roll pretty easily. You can also get normal spell damage rolls a little bit less easily for the higher level ones, but crafting a wand like this is not too insane. I put notes on how to craft this in the POB as well, so you can check that out if you would like. As for the tree, honestly, it's a pretty classic wander tree. You just kind of like snake along the right side. You grab all the crit and LE stuff. I'll talk about any small changes that I have made to like previous wand trees. One is that we are using a cluster down here. We do have endurance charges, and we needed a source of these while we were fighting bosses. So we are using enduring composure here. This pretty much makes it so that you have endurance charges constantly. You're gonna get hit by some something in boss fights because you face tank things most of the time. So this is just a wand cluster with Opportunistic Fusillade, Fuel the Fight, and Martial Prowess. Notably, you can get any of the mods here in the back if you like, but Martial Prowess is typically the best. The other change here is going to be this Thread of Hope. Because we did need to come over for this maximum frenzy charge, I did decide to go ahead and grab these 2 nodes because they are pretty solid. There's some other stuff that you could probably do here. You could probably get like endurance charge on kill somewhere else and then, you know, like drop these 2 and get something else, but it seemed pretty decent for what it was. And I think that's all that's really changed. We are using a Lethal Pride with maximum Fortify now instead of double damage, so I do have quite a bit of maximum Fortify here. So this might be expensive. Keep that in mind. Get as much Fortify as you can, and then just get any other mods that you can. And then we have some like chance to avoid being stunned and chance to blind and a little bit of chaos res and stuff like that, but pretty much everything else with the tree is pretty much the same. There is a Storm Shroud here, so keep in mind we're using Storm Shroud plus these life nodes here, as well as the 48% chance to avoid being shocked in our belt, which is increased by 95% to make us completely elemental ailment immune. So that is pretty useful as well. And then lastly, we do have this Watcher's Eye here. The 7% chance to evade attack hits while affected by Grace is the thing you're looking for here. I just randomly found this one that has increased lightning damage while affected by Wrath, which is pretty insane. It wasn't any more expensive than the other one, so I just, you know, grabbed it. But you don't need that by any means. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is the Mercenary. So there are a couple things to talk about here. One, we are using a Doriani setup. Kind of unfortunate this league that Doriani's has made lightning just better than basically everything else. Wanders typically like lightning, so this is fine. There are some problems to overcome here, though. The Mercenary, when you're using Doriani's, is not as tanky as it normally would be, and when you make it really, really, really juiced in some of those tier 17 maps, they can take a lot of damage. So we decided to give them Perkle's Toe, which makes lightning damage of enemies hitting you lucky, which means they're taking even more damage because we want to be lucky. So we're getting lightning resistance does not affect the lightning damage that you take, meaning that, you know, you're just going to take a bunch, and nearby enemies have a lightning resistance equal to yours. We're using these mirrored rings to give him minus lightning res, so he's got negative 115 lightning resistance, meaning all enemies that we're fighting that are nearby this Mercenary have negative 115 lightning resist. So now what this means is that modifiers like that change the amount of resistance that a boss would have are completely nullified because it just sets it to exactly 115 negative. However, penetration and stuff still works here. But with these modifiers, my Mercenary dies very infrequently. I would say the things that kill him are the removes life per hit on bosses mod on tier 17 maps. That just murders Mercenaries instantly. And then Shavron from the Abomination map, when she gets like really juiced and starts shooting out a bunch of lightning projectiles, they just get annihilated. I just don't do Abomination because that boss sucks anyways. But yeah, besides that, we are using Comb's Binding. This does give us a little bit more Fizz Max it, which is pretty good because the Mercenary is typically near the boss. Brittle Ground is okay. There's not really much to get here. You could get Action Speed. You could get Sapped Ground would actually be pretty good as well, but it's hard to position the Mercenary, so this doesn't do a ton. We do have Intimidate here just in case the Mercenary hits the boss before I hit the boss. It could happen, so this will make sure that the boss is at least intimidated. And then for this particular Infamous Storming Zealot, he does do mostly lightning damage, but it's physical damage converted into lightning damage, so we want to convert the rest of that if we can, because he can only deal lightning damage. There's no other type of damage he can deal. We do have Vol's Vision. This helps him stay alive in these maps. 400 life regen, 12% maximum life. Chaos and Fire Resist, pretty good. And then lastly, we have this Staff, which gives us Wrath has 55% increased aura effect, which this Mercenary does have Wrath, which does affect us, and this does give us a ton of damage. Now, there is another Mercenary, I talk about it in the notes of the POB, but there's a Mercenary that uses like 2 Convoking Wands. You could get 80% Wrath effect here if you use those 2 Convoking Wands, and that would probably be better, but he never shows up for me, so I still don't have him after hundreds of maps, so it is what it is. But one big thing about the Mercenary is that it is kind of important to position him sometimes. So whenever you are ready to do like a big burst on the boss, you will want to use your ability that teleports the Mercenary to you, especially if they're off on the side. So make good use of this. Whenever the Mercenary is away, teleport him directly next to you, because the aura is pretty big, right? Like, you're always going to have Wrath. Like, you can be pretty much anywhere moving around as long as you don't have like Acceleration Shrine, and you'll have Wrath. The Perkle's toe buff is honestly a pretty big like range as well. As long as you are pulling him towards you, you're gonna have that on you all the time. So those buffs are pretty much always up whenever you're fighting bosses. So let's go ahead and jump into Path of Building so I can show you a little bit about what's going on over there. So I want you to keep in mind that Path of Building has not been updated with like a mercenary section. So there is a lot of just like weird configuration warrior stuff that you have to do to be able to get all this stuff working properly. Like you have to put in the mercenary auras and stuff in here and config them. I do have the mercenaries gear right here in this list, but yeah, so it's kind of a mess, to be honest. Like to get Doriani's in here, I'm having to make my own lightning resist down. So if you want to see the actual defenses of the build, you have to like disable this line, and then you'll see we actually have like 150,000 effective hit pool, 60,000 elemental, and like 18,000 fizz max hit. This is without cast when damage taken Immortal Call. So we do have endurance charges, remember that. So when Immortal Call does proc, we are pretty tanky, 88,000 and 85,000-ish max hit on pretty much everything. And yeah, and then we just gain the endurance charges all the way back pretty much immediately. So this POB will have like all of the skills that I'm using, the items on my character, as well as the items that I have on my mercenary. It will have the full tree here that you can transition into, and it does have a decent amount of notes. So this is the main thing that I worked on with this. I have my personal regex that I use in here for rolling tier 17s, explain why I do all of these different things. I talk about the content that the build can do, like in particular, the Abomination boss is pretty bad because Shavron will one-shot you. It's not good for uber bossing or mechanics that want a ton of single target damage. Talk about the mercenary, all the info about that. I talk about how to transition from the other version of the build. I also talk about crafting all of the gear. So all of the notes about crafting all of the pieces of gear that I did craft, they're all in here. So you can craft them yourself with this information. And then there'll be random stuff that I'll add to this as people have problems, as they always do. And I'll just keep adding as I answer more and more questions over in Discord and stuff like that. So make sure to check back here to see any updates, as well as just for the POB in general. And that's going to be it for the video. There might be one more update for this build, depending on if I do want to go ahead and do like the full Fizz version of this build, where I craft a Fizz wand and, you know, I get a headhunter and maybe, you know, the Svalin shield, all that like big boy stuff. I might do that, but I'm not 100% certain that I will, because this version of the build kind of did everything that I wanted it to. I don't really need to do much more with this. It doesn't really seem super necessary, but a big Fizz version would be pretty cool either way, so we'll see. No promises. So remember, boys, if you enjoy this content, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest videos, and stay safe out there in raid class. And I'll see you guys in the next video.